Now let's take a little bit of time to discuss government policy around oligopoly behavior in the U.S. And so we've talked about OPEC and the fact that oligopoly cartels do exist, and they have a big effect on some areas of our life, like OPEC's effect on our prices of oil and oil-based products like gasoline. But in the U.S., we have antitrust policy, and so we have government efforts, we have policies that attempt to prevent oligopolies from colluding and behaving like monopolies. And the reason for this is that, as we've seen in previous videos, when oligopolies behave like monopolies, then they create inefficiencies in markets just the same as monopolies do. And so if we can sort of maintain the competitive spirit in an oligopoly market, it can help to increase efficiency in those markets and keep consumers from being taken advantage of. And so this dates all the way back to 1890 in the U.S. with the Sherman Antitrust Act, which said that it's illegal to monopolize, attempt to monopolize, combine or conspire with any other person or persons to monopolize any part of trade, right? In the U.S. or with foreign nations. So this is a felony to form a monopoly or to act like a monopoly in an oligopoly situation. And then to further clarify that, the Clayton Act of 1914 said that price discrimination that lessens competition is illegal. Exclusive dealings that restrict the ability of a buyer to deal with competitors. So you're not allowed to give maybe a discount or something like that on your product if your customer will not go to a competitor. Things like cell phone companies in the past have had the ability to sort of keep you to themselves by saying, if you leave, you can't take your phone number with you. Things like that have changed in recent U.S. history because of this particular law that says you can't restrict the buyer's ability to deal with competitors. Tying arrangements, which are kind of like bundling, but if you bundle products that aren't related. So it's been considered okay for bundling related items, so things like your cable company bundling channels together, that's been considered okay. It would not be okay if I don't know, if your cable provider, this is kind of a silly example, but if your cable provider decided that in order to buy their package of channels, you also had to buy a whole set of silverware from them or something like that. Things that aren't related to each other at all, but they force you to buy another thing in order to get what you want. That's illegal. That's a tying arrangement. Mergers that lessen competition, and so you see this in the news a lot. When one company wants to buy out another or merge with another, they have to go to the U.S. government and get permission to do that. And they use things like those ratios, right, to see how strong are you going to be in this new market. Are you going to be essentially a monopoly? And if you are, then that merger is not allowed. And this law also prevents a person from serving as a director on more than one board in the same industry. So you won't see the same person on the board of directors for Coca-Cola and on the board of directors for Pepsi. It's illegal because that would be a conflict of interest, and it would certainly provide an incentive for collusion if the same folks were on both boards. Also, illegal is predatory pricing. So predatory pricing is when a firm sets their price below average variable cost, which we know from our studies previously that if price is below average variable cost, typically that means you should shut down, right? Because you can't afford to even pay your variable cost for the day. You shouldn't open that day. But if a firm is large enough and has pockets deep enough, they can set their prices below average variable cost with the intent of driving their rivals from the market. So someone giant like Walmart, for example, they've got enough money that it's okay for them to lose money for a little while by setting their prices so low that their competitors who don't have as deep pockets are driven out of business, and then they can hike their prices back up, right? That's predatory pricing. The problem with predatory pricing is it's really difficult to distinguish from intense market competition or from economies of scale. So Walmart may just have lower variable costs than their competitors because they're so large and because they benefit from economies of scale. And so how do you know from the fact that they have the lowest prices doesn't necessarily mean they're practicing predatory pricing. It could just mean they have lower costs than others. So examples, Walmart, as I've mentioned, Microsoft, these are companies that have been accused of predatory pricing in the past, but it's been really difficult to try to prove it because they're so large that maybe it's just economies of scale, or maybe it's just really intense market competition. Now, predatory pricing is not the same thing as price leadership. So price leadership is a situation where a single firm produces a large share of the total output and then is the price leader. So the single firm, maybe we're in an oligopoly where we have a high concentration ratio, so the top few firms really control the market, but one of them is the clear leader that controls most of the market. And because of that, that firm not only controls most of the market, not only sells most of the output, but they're also going to be the leader in setting the price and controlling prices in the market. When they set their quantities and prices to maximize their profits, the smaller firms then sort of have to match that price. Price leadership is not illegal because it's not explicit collusion. It's just one firm maximizing their profit and the other firms sort of doing what they have to do to compete. This is not collusion. So an example here is in airlines. The leader airline will set the fare for a given route, and others sort of have to follow suit just to be able to compete.